Hello, guys. This is Maxor here with another behind the scenes or editing insights into this project. Um, let's just get started with it. You can probably tell that it is quite the complicated project, and as I keep going on, I think I do note that the projects are getting progressively more and more complicated. This one being the most complicated and tedious one that I've had to do. You can see in the timeline the sheer scale of it. You see about 2 minutes or so just from this timeline. If we were to zoom out throughout the entire maybe 16-minute runtime, in many cases it gets quite crowded. In some places in my video, I would say that I made a lot of jokes per minute. Just every single time that I found something that I thought would be entertaining visually, I applied it. And I think the reason for that really is because if you take a look at Genshin Impact itself, a lot of the footage is just fighting, exploring, climbing, looking around, that kind of thing. And as it turns out, not a lot fits visually. Oddly enough, my footage is so long, I have so much footage, that I found sorting it to be very, very hard, and finding very, very specific things out of the hours and hours of running and climbing and fighting was hard. It was actually hard to find footage of me opening chests. Like, I wanted some footage of that, but it took so long. But if I were to do that, for instance, I would go to my exploration things here, and I have labeled all my clips, every single clip I took, every recording session. Sorting through this was a bit of a nightmare. Sometimes I would have an idea of what I wanted, and other times I wouldn't. Sometimes I would edit sections right after I played them because the memory was so fresh in my head that it helped make really good sections. For instance, the section on language. Oh, and by the way, I do screw around in Gary's mod before I make every video, and just create clips in Gary's mod. I don't use most of them, but here's one of them that I used. If you saw the Patreon Doge video, which I consider to be sort of another video that's like this except much shorter, you'll be able to tell that when I created this clip right here, this 1 second clip,
by 7 gods who
just for that, I created this whole image. Originally the crowns are wrong, originally the chairs are wrong. I had to remake the image. I had to look around for all these PNGs and to go to different PNG websites. You try to get a HD image for the background. By the way, getting a 1920 by 1080 sized image for the background is annoyingly difficult. In this video in particular, I really wanted to go for more of what I would consider chaotic sound editing. I wanted the sound editing to emphasize what was on screen because I saw other YouTubers actually do this better than I do, and it's something I wanted to improve on. So it was a specific goal of mine that whenever I had visual gags, for instance this gag,
actually went hiking to find it.
I wanted to create the feeling that I had a bigger repertoire of memes and references in the video than I actually did. So a lot of the time I used 3 different death noises for most of the video to emphasize a lot of the gags, and it just worked. Other times you would have to improvise. So, for instance, when it came to making this section where I overlap my voice several times over.
Just please God.
So what that actually is a transition from the regular voice sounding to the voice with the distortion. Let's turn off the distortion and just see what that sounds like real quick.
Please God.
Versus
Please God.
and eventually all of the noise clips in this have the distortion present. So, for instance, how do I do a clip like this? Well, first of all, this bottom right clip right here, or right clip in this case, is actually a series of other clips that are all from the map and from generally the same map, so that it looks consistent. You actually don't notice, but that is on the right, several clips. It's very easy to layer things together simply by just moving them. So in this case, both of these parts move in sequence to make room for this. and it proceeds until there's fourths. But what is different is that when it comes time to transition like this, these bottom clips here are actually all merged into just one render called needed, because I needed it to finish the render. But anyways, and what you do is you are able to actually change the scale only for the height. So you get the feeling that it's all being scrunched and manipulated in order to make room for the next clip. And also, I don't actually have more than 3 different clips playing at the same time, even though it sounds like there might be 5 different voices. It's just an illusion.
A single goddamn word.
So I use that sound effect actually quite a bit throughout my entire video. I use it over and I use it over and over and over again. That sound clip comes from this video here. And you can actually manipulate this sound to just have a lot of what you want. So for instance, if I include an analog delay, I can do a bunch of really weird stuff with it. Now you may be wondering actually how I accomplish this sound effect in particular, and I'm going to show you exactly how, because people keep asking me to. How it works in order to create that sound effect, for instance here.
I haven't seen any.
So what you do actually is you have what's called a flanger effect, and you have these exact settings. It doesn't let me create a preset for some reason. So what I do actually is I have a specific image in my computer that's just there permanently called the flanger effects guide.png. I drag it out, and I just, every time I do a project, I open this up, and then I specifically look at this image, and then I copy the effects onto the effect. So if you really want to do it for the flanger, you can just pause it and look. I just kind of want to emphasize the sheer size of this project. It is by far just one of the worst in terms of work. What I kept doing often was I would look at the incomplete clips that I was working on, and I'd start breathing irregularly as a result because I didn't like them. And it took me a long time to get to the point where I started relaxing while I was editing. And for the longest time, it was actually making me feel very tired, and I was feeling pretty poor because of the constant irregular breathing. It was sort of a situation of I would see something I didn't like, or I would think that I could do better on something, and I would go like that. Every single time. It's an actual serious problem that makes it harder for me to edit, so we're going to be working on that next video. We're going to try to calm down a bit. With any luck, this is probably the most complicated project ever. If you haven't seen these before, you might be confused by the colors and by how things are classified, but it's actually quite easy. I decided that I would color and name code every single clip that I implemented, and when I imported new clips, I would just give them arbitrarily high numbers for no reason because I was a disorganized little shit. That's why this kind of looks like dog vomit, is because it is. Fun fact, actually, a glitch ruined this video. When I gave examples of the funny English dialogue, I gave 2, starring these 2 male voice actors. But there was actually a funnier clip at the time that I really wanted to use. Let's see if the glitch is still here. For no reason, literally no reason, this clip is muted, and I cannot get the audio back no matter what. This clip has some of the funnier English dialogue that I would really like to have showed you, but for some reason, Adobe didn't like it. One last thing I want to touch on is how exactly I do the shaking motion and the sort of blurry motion that comes through in a lot of my clips. So if you want an example of that, you can see here, it's very blurry, it's very shaky, and it progressively gets like that, but you don't actually see any effects here. That's because for my project, I have to link it to After Effects. I do use After Effects for all of my videos. So let's make this Twitch, for instance. Let's do that and walk through that process. This causes my computer to cry, by the way. So this is pretty much how I use After Effects when it comes to my videos. I will actually use After Effects just as a supplementary thing. I don't like to edit for extensive periods of time in After Effects. Also, because typically I create a comp that is disposable. You know, I'm never really going to look at it again once I create it. I can just type in anything, and usually it's fine. So what you do is you enable motion blur, and then you go find the wiggle effect, which is the best effect in After Effects. You simply need the wiggle effect to work. How about we crank up that speed, and how about we crank up the wiggle and see what it looks like?
So to explain that, you have.
Honestly, I don't see anything wrong with it. You know, it's perfectly fine. And if it, for instance, it's a travesty, I just press Control Z, and then it's done. So there's a lot of steps, and how you make a video better is you layer on subtlety. So, for instance, you change the text here. Instead of just being orange, you give it that extra dimension by changing the opacity settings, stacking them on top of each other, putting a blur in the background to make sure that you can see the text. When it comes to even like the smallest things you have to make, in this you can see I made at least 3 different decisions as related to just the text appearing on the screen. When you edit for a film, there's more color grading, there's more audio, but in this case, for YouTube editing, there's just a lot of layered small complexities in everything, and I don't necessarily have to do it. I also do things like layer on different GIFs, different images, yada yada. You probably understand by this point. So I do want to thank you guys for supporting me and making this video possible. As terrifying as it is, and how hard it is to edit, the lore section in particular is very bad because it involves a lot of images, like how I had to animate, 7 separate seals, and then I also had to manually animate a crack with space in it. But I am a perfectionist. So thank you again. It's been fun.